Welcome to SciTrek, your sci-fi, TV and movie channel. This week I'm going to be looking at one of the most iconic names in all of sci-fi, the Starship Enterprise. So the name of this video is The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, commas, Enterprise J. We'll get to that a little while later. But I really want to talk and compare all of the different iterations of the Starship Enterprise that we've seen in canon and a little bit of off canon. And we've got to start, obviously, with the original, the NX. The NX-01 for Star Trek Enterprise annoyed the crap out of me when this series came out, primarily because the first Enterprise is the Enterprise 1701, captained by Pike and then Kirk. They shoehorned this whole ship, this NX class, into the Star Trek canon simply because they wanted to call this series Enterprise. They could have called this starship anything else. They could have Endeavour, Columbia, something like that. They could have called this ship anything, but they insisted on calling it Enterprise. I always really like the design of this ship. I think it's actually really nicely done. I think it really shows an evolution from sort of like the very early stages into what they would then become the 1701. And I thought they did a really, really nice job of sort of showing that progression and keeping the technology reasonable, something they didn't bother doing when they did Discovery. They just went, well, let's just create something crazy. And if you look at this other vessel, this refit vessel that was always planned for Series 5, which God, I wish they'd done it in Series 4, it would have made so much more sense and might have even saved the show. They really showed a progression towards making this vessel look a little bit more like a Constitution. It showed where the Federation and Starfleet would then go with starship designs. I really wish we'd seen that. We never got to, but it was a lovely looking ship. They got everything right with the design. They just should never have called it Enterprise. But moving on to the actual original Enterprise 1701. The Constitution class is, in its original form, not the best looking ship in the world. But the refit for the movies, genuinely, I consider to be one of the finest starship designs in all of sci-fi. It is a gorgeous looking ship. It looks like it's doing 100 miles an hour and it stood still. It's just a brilliant design. One of the major things for the refit, obviously, that we saw in the motion picture is a complete redesign of this vessel. Most importantly, a massive upgrade to its shields. 3 Klingon battle cruisers were wiped out by V'Ger. They didn't even have a chance. They were completely disintegrated, whereas the Enterprise was able to take 1 or 2 hits. This really showed a quantum leap in shield design technology for the Federation. This was really the point, I think, when the Federation overtook the Klingons in ship design. 289 meters long and 21 or 23 decks, depending on which user manual you read. The Enterprise was a pretty big ship. Remember, in the Enterprise E only had 24 decks, so I mean, from a height point of view, not a small vessel. Not, however, as big as the J.J. Abrams shot at the Enterprise. That ship was freaking enormous. J.J. Abrams took the Enterprise and just said, we can't have that. On an IMAX, this will look stupid. So they made the Enterprise, for the Kelvin timeline, enormous. 700 and something meters long. Actually makes it significantly bigger than even the E. This design was completely stupid, but not the worst thing about the Enterprise from the Kelvin timeline. The warp core, particularly in the first movie, is completely confusing. We actually see the warp core at one point, but then he ejects it towards the end of the film and they shoot out loads of little warp cores. Don't really know why. The whole ship seems to be water powered for some reason. It seems to be hydroelectric or something. I mean, you look at all the water pipes and I think they did all that just to have that one joke where Scotty accidentally gets beamed into a water pipe. You just see him go zoom through past. But it seems to be hydroelectric. It's so strange. But lens flares aside, the design of this Enterprise is horrible. I don't like it. I don't like the engines. I think they look stupid. And I just all over this ship is just horrible. I hate this ship. Even though I actually quite like the movies, I don't really consider them Star Trek if I'm honest. But I quite like the movies. But this ship, I hate it. Moving quickly into the 1701A, after the original Enterprise was destroyed, we quickly got a new Enterprise. Constitution class again. It was actually another vessel that was renamed and reclassed so that it could, so Kirk could take command and get back out there pretty quick. This is one of the ships that we actually see very, very little of. It almost gets no screen time really, and well, we moved into the Enterprise B pretty quickly. Even though obviously on the Enterprise B, everything was fit on Tuesday. Now, that was a great joke, but how do you fit everything on Tuesday? The tractor beam system is quite a big piece of technology. That maybe finished on Tuesday, not fit on Tuesday, never really made sense. Now we see almost none of the Enterprise B in canon. We only really see it at the beginning generations, but the Excelsior class is obviously one of the most successful starships ever designed by the Federation. This ship survives well into the next generation sort of class. We see it again in Deep Space Nine. It was a mainstay of the battle against the Dominion. This is one of the most capable ship designs of any ship we've ever seen, even though the grand experiment sort of failed with its transwarp capabilities, allegedly. The vessel was designed to be a very capable all-round starship. It had an incredibly strong superstructure, and that really showed throughout its survivability. The vessel lasted for over 200 years and was still in regular frontline use. In yesterday's Enterprise, we saw the Enterprise C. An Ambassador-class starship. Not a starship we really see a great deal of across the Enterprise franchise, but I actually thought a really lovely design. This is one of the first times we ever really see a female captain, Captain Harriman. And this vessel was really, really important in the peace negotiations between the Klingons and the Federation. The second Khitomer Accords, the Khitomer Accords had actually stuck this time. The Klingons basically became an extension of the Federation, really, by TNG. And that alliance really saved the Federation during the Dominion War, even though it went wrong a few times. The Enterprise C really does hold its place within the Federation as one of the most important starships really in its history, even though we don't see a great deal of it. And I love the Tasha Yar story, just love it. Then we get into probably my favourite Enterprise, but because of my age, I'd seen the original series, but I was a bit young. When the Next Generation came out, I was 11 or 12. My formative years of sci-fi was watching the Next Generation. I love the Galaxy-class starship. I had the manual. I read all about it. You know that there are dolphins aboard the Enterprise. I knew that 15 years ago because I scoured that handbook front to back. "641 meters long, over 40 decks. This ship was enormous. The Galaxy class being able to separate the saucer section. The Calypso, the captain's yacht that we never got to see, but I really wish we had done. It is really from the golden age of the Federation, when the Federation was in a period of peace, before the Borg invasion, where we saw families removed from the Enterprise and all other Federation starships. The Galaxy class really was a family vessel. In lots of ways, it was a mobile community, a mobile city, and it was just a beautiful design. They took the Constitution class and they made everything bigger, better. It's, again, streamlined design, fast, even when it stood still. I love the way it used to have the sweeping lines and the phaser banks that would go shh. I just love everything about this starship. It will always be my favourite, and it will always have a little place right in there. But I have to say, when I first saw the Enterprise E, I was in the cinema. I'd gone to see the Star Trek films back to back, so it was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and this was the first time I'd seen this movie. And remember, this was really before the internet and things, so I hadn't seen any hints of what the new Enterprise was going to look like. And when we have that opening shot and it sweeps across, everybody in the cinema went, ah! It was actually audible. And I'm British. We don't shout and yell and get all overexcited about things. We are very, very like stiff upper lip and all that. So for everyone to actually go, ah! that was like a massive outburst of emotion for us. It's a gorgeous ship. It is battling with the Galaxy class for my favourite, really. 24 decks, or 26, or 29, or more, depending on canon. If you believe Picard, it's got 24. If you believe Worf, it's got 26. If you believe Riker, it's got 29. And if you believe the schematic on the back of the wall, it's only got 23. But it is one of the most powerful vessels built as its time. It's a multi-purpose vessel. It's not focused like the Defiant. It is a classic Federation multi-purpose capable vessel. But it is stunningly capable. Again, it looks like it's doing warp 10 when it stood still. It's very well armed, very powerful vessel for its size. Even though it got its ass handed to it by Shinzon, if you actually think about that battle, 3 Romulan warbirds get wiped out. The Enterprise loses that battle until Picard does a suicide mission, but the Enterprise held its own much better against a much bigger, much better armed Scimitar. The Enterprise is an incredibly capable fighting machine as well as science vessel and explorer. 685 meters long, the Sovereign class is just beautiful. Now we're getting off canon here a little bit for the Enterprise F. Now, this has appeared in the comics that ran up to the new Picard series. 1,041 meters long. I love the design of the ship, and it really came from Star Trek Online. There was a competition to design the next Enterprise, and this, a modified version of this vessel, was the winning design, basically. A lot of people have said this is a horrendously ugly vessel, and I don't agree. I love the way the neck is. One design flaw, a lot of the time with the Enterprise, is that it actually does have structural weak points. The neck between the saucer and the body section is incredibly weak. We've seen that exploited in a couple of movies when the Enterprise has been destroyed, no more so than the more recent Star Trek film. The warp nacelles as well. Again, the struts for the warp nacelles, incredibly weak points in this design. Actually, as a starship, as a fighting machine, the Enterprise really is flawed. There's no reason for it to have this shape, other than it looks incredible and it's a design philosophy that they've gone with. But really, you could just make a starship a box with engines sticking out the back and a Borg cube, basically, and it would be far stronger, far more structurally sound. There's no reason for it to be aerodynamic and pretty. So, in lots of ways, the design of the Enterprise is stupid. The Enterprise F really gets around a lot of those design problems. The double neck between the saucer section thing is much stronger, much sturdier. We don't know much about this vessel, but I do suspect we might see it in Picard Series 2. 3 more Enterprises that we've never seen. There is no canon, we know nothing about them. G, the H, and the I. We've never seen them, we know nothing about them. But we have seen, and is canon, the J. And it's the ugliest starship ever designed. It's ridiculous and it looks stupid. It should be called the USS Definitely Going to Break, because it's got these stupid little fragile warp engines sticking out the back with a little thing. It just looks stupid. It's enormous. It's over 3,000 meters long and nearly 3,000 meters wide. We know nothing about its armament. We know very little about the actual starship, except we know it was launched in roughly the 26th century. We know that apparently the Federation hasn't really technologically advanced at all. Lots of starships in the Federation universe don't have a deflector dish, but the Enterprise J still does. Most Enterprise have much better engine designs than the Enterprise J. It seems, in most ways, the technology just paused for like 300 years. All they really did was make it much, much bigger. And like I say, the design for where the warp engines are, it just looks stupid. We can assume this vessel would be transwarp capable, and it is really a flying city. We can assume it's very well armed. For everything else, the Federation is still pretty strong at this point. But in lots and lots of ways, this vessel makes no sense. I think it was a design that was thrown together for the Enterprise series, and I think, in hindsight, the designers of this probably regret it. A really, really ugly ship. And that really is the good, the bad, and the fucking ugly of all our Starship Enterprises. If you are new to my channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. I am going to be doing videos looking far more detail at all the different iterations of the Starship Enterprise and all those little secrets and details that we, us nerds, love to get stuck into. But if you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe, hit that bell notification. It really helps us out, and leave a comment. Which is your favourite Enterprise, and which is the Enterprise that you really, really maybe don't like so much? I'll see you next time.